Welcome to Enscape for Mac. In this introduction video to Enscape for Archicad on the Mac operating system, we'll cover how to open your Archicad designs to review in a high-quality visualization while you design on your Mac. We will explore the movement inside Enscape as well as the user interface both in Archicad as well as in the Enscape window. We'll then move on to enrich your Archicad scene with the Enscape material editor and 3D assets before we will learn how to export your design as still image rendering, 360-degree panorama, or as web standalone experience. So, let's have a look. First of all, Enscape is not a standalone software, it's a plugin. This means that after installation, you won't find it among your other applications. Instead, start Archicad with any model of your choice, or even an empty scene. If Enscape has been installed properly, you should see an Enscape menu at the top of your Archicad interface. Clicking on Enscape, you should see a list of the Enscape buttons, as well as a Enscape toolbar button at the very bottom. Click that to add the Enscape toolbar to your Archicad interface. You can now dock it to the side of the viewport if you want. To simply start Enscape with any given project open, click the Start Enscape button. If you're not in a 3D view right now, you might receive a message asking you to select a 3D view to start Enscape. In that case, a simple way to start Enscape is to select Generic Perspective from the project map. After starting Enscape, it will open a separate rendering window showing your design. If it's a default empty scene you've opened, you'll still see the sky, sun, and a floor which is infinitely far below. Now you can work in Archicad like you used to. Enscape will always show an accurate representation of your design. If you're working on just one monitor, it's probably best to align both windows next to each other. Play around for a bit. You'll notice that all changes are being synchronized. Whether you model geometry, change layer visibility to hide or show objects, and so on. To move around in Enscape, there's a number of simple options to choose from. First of all, the default navigation works with the WASD or the arrow keys. Press W or the up arrow to move forwards, S or the down arrow to move backwards, A and D or left and right to move left or right. Left-click into the Enscape window and move the mouse while holding the left mouse button to look around. This will affect the direction you're moving in when pressing W or the up arrow, so try doing all at once. Hold the left mouse button, press W or the up arrow, and move your mouse gently to change the direction you're moving towards. If you feel like you're moving too fast or too slow, consider changing the movement speed in the Enscape window settings. You can access them in the top right corner of the Enscape window. To change the daytime in Enscape, hold Shift and the right mouse button, then move the mouse. Or hold Shift and slide 2 fingers over your touchpad. To look up all of these controls and many more, whenever you like, click the question mark button in the top right corner of the Enscape window. An even simpler option is this. You can just as well tell Archicad to synchronize the camera movement into Enscape. Click the Synchronize Views button to toggle this option on or off. When enabled, you can just continue moving in Archicad and Enscape will follow on the spot. One more option I want to discuss here is to just use Archicad Views. Any 3D views you have set up in your design can be accessed directly in Enscape. For this, in the Enscape window at the top, check out the toolbar on the left half of the screen. Click the button with the binocular icon on it. This will open the Enscape View Management. Clicking any of these views will move the Enscape camera to its location and also update the time of day and visibility settings to what's set in that particular 3D view. This way, you can prepare a whole presentation in next to no time. To top things off, you can even connect visual settings presets to all these views to change automatically when you select them. But this is being covered in other lessons. Let's continue focusing on the basics for now. We'll keep exploring the user interface. Let's continue in the Archicad part before moving to the Enscape window. We've already covered the Start Enscape and the View Synchronization button, both of which are found at the top of the Enscape toolbar. In between the two, you can find the Live Updates button. While Enscape will usually update every change you make in your Archicad scene by default, this button can pause the live synchronization if sometimes you want to perform a number of small changes and then update them all at once. Below the Synchronize Views button, you can find the Asset Library button. This button opens a window that gives you access to thousands of optimized, high-quality 3D models that you can place in your scene to quickly add detail for a lifelike presentation. For easy navigation in the Enscape library, use the search function, categories, or tags to narrow down your search. To place assets, all you need to do is to select one, left-click it twice, and then left-click in your Archicad scene where it's supposed to be placed. To prevent the asset library from reloading assets from the internet once in a while, depending on your internet connection, consider clicking the Offline Asset Library checkbox, so everything stays stored locally on your machine. Enscape assets will be represented in your Archicad scene with a low detail placeholder, but will show up in high detail in the Enscape window. Furthermore, using the placeholders in your Archicad scene, you can move Enscape assets, rotate them, or hide the layer they are stored on. Below the Enscape Asset Library button, in the Enscape toolbar, is where you can find the Enscape Material Editor. This is one of the most important parts of the user interface. This is where we enhance our existing Archicad surfaces with some of the detail work that makes the visualization truly realistic and emotionally powerful. This tutorial is a bit too short to cover everything right here, but let's go over a quick demonstration to show you the power of this interface. Keep in mind, Enscape will only access the existing surfaces you already have in your Archicad scene. If you want to create a new surface and apply it to a part of your design, you do all of that in Archicad like before. Having the Enscape Material Editor open, you will find a list of all surfaces in your Archicad scene. They will appear as materials in the Enscape Material Editor. You can select the material from the list of materials on the left side of the Material Editor to edit it further. At the top, you can pick from multiple material types, like grass and water. But for now, we will stay in the generic type. You can get a number of interesting materials by editing the base attributes, like color, roughness, or reflections, the metallic value, or transparency. However, it really gets interesting when we involve image files, called textures, to control some of these attributes. Where to get image textures? Well, it's up to you. You can use the existing color textures you already have in Archicad. Also, there are plenty of resources online to download textures from. If you don't know where to start, come with me to a site called www.ambientcg.com. Here, you can pick from a large number of materials, which all are available for free under Creative Commons license. Download any material you want to go with. I recommend downloading it in 2K resolution. That's a good rule of thumb for Enscape. This is really the same workflow for almost all materials, so you can copy this workflow for all of your designs. Once downloaded, open the folder you've received. We will find a number of image files, of which we'll use 3: color, displacement, and roughness. Grab these 3 files and store them somewhere on your machine. We'll now go back to the Enscape Material Editor. Make sure the material you want to edit is selected in the left-hand list. If there's already a set of textures connected to your material, first remove them by clicking on the X symbol next to their thumbnail on the right. You will see the material in the Enscape window lose its details and become a featureless, simple surface. Next, we'll connect the 3 textures to the individual inputs. Again, to clarify, in the Enscape material, attributes like color and reflectivity are controlled by image files. These image files are called textures. Let's begin with the color attribute. Color goes into the albedo texture input. Press the folder icon to select the color texture image from where you've stored it on your Mac. Once it's connected, check the scale in Enscape. If it's not right, you can either edit the texture scaling in Archicad. Again, all the changes are happening on both sides. Or, much more conveniently, directly in the Enscape Material Editor. Click the blue texture name to open the texture editor here. Enable explicit texture transformation to be able to enter a size for your texture. See how it updates instantly in the Enscape window. Once the scale is right, click this arrow here to return to the main material interface. Next, we'll connect the displacement texture to the height map input. This texture type is used to create the illusion of subtle or strong details on your surfaces. Again, click the right folder icon and select the displacement image file we've downloaded. By default, the image will be loaded in as a bump texture, which is awesome for any subtle detail like wood, plaster and such. Do you see how nicely the detail now interacts with the lights and reflections? You can change the height map amount to make the effect stronger or more subtle. Oftentimes, the best results are really subtle here. If instead you want to go for a really strong surface deformation, change the mode from bump map to displacement map. This effect is much more pronounced. So you might want to dial down the strength, but you see the potential, right? This helps a great deal to get a viewer to imagine what it feels like to be in that place. Lastly, let's also connect the reflections texture. It will control the roughness of our surface. This effect is not as clearly visible as the height map, so I'll remove the color and height input for now so you can see what it is doing. The roughness manages how reflective a surface is. So again, we get a lot of subtle detail that just adds to make a scene really believable. Cool, right? Finally, if you have a bunch of materials you want to keep for future projects, or that you'd like to share with others easily, why not save them as Enscape material package? Click on the small symbol next to the name of your material in the materials list. Here, you can export your material including all textures and settings as single file. Or you can replace an existing material with any other material from your hard drive in an instant by importing a material package file. To import an entire material library in one go, click the 3 lines at the top of the materials list. Here, select batch import.matpkg and select the materials wherever you have stored them on your machine. Now that we've learned about materials in Enscape, before we move on to export our scene as image, panorama, or standalone, let's quickly cover artificial lighting in Enscape. So you know that Enscape provides you with a sun and sky by default, and that's all well and good. And you've seen that you can store different times of day in your views. But what if you want to illuminate your scene using artificial lighting? Well, it's simple. You can just go on whatever way you'd work with lighting anyways through Archicad. I'm just gonna place a spotlight right in my scene. Let's change the color and brightness a bit. As you see, all the changes are directly synchronized into Enscape just as well. If you don't see your light, make sure the environment is dark enough or set the light to a high enough brightness value. Alright, let's get familiar with how you can share your Enscape visualizations. Let's switch to the Enscape user interface now to do that. I'll also put my Enscape window in full screen so we can see better. Currently in Enscape for Mac, you can export your model in 3 ways: still image rendering, 360-degree panorama, or web standalone. The 3 buttons to do that are found here. You can just click each one to start the export, but let's prepare a bit before doing so. For a still image, you might first want to change the resolution. You can do that in the visual settings, which can be found here in the top right corner of the Enscape window. The Output tab is where you can change the resolution, the image file format, additional passes to be exported, and so on. Let's close the visual settings for now. We can enable the Save Frame option to see the extents of our image to be generated. Use this to set up the perspective you want to go with. Tip: if you are in a closed room and don't seem to have enough space to get just the right view for your export, change the field of view angle. You can find it back in the visual settings. If it's grayed out, it's because you're synchronizing the camera from Archicad. Disable the view synchronization and you'll be able to edit the field of view. Zoom out a bit and you should be able to frame every scene just fine. Alternative types of perspective include a 2-point perspective, and an orthographic perspective. But let's stick with a default perspective for now. Adjust your position accordingly. Lastly, let's use Shift and the right mouse button to change the daytime so the sunlight or artificial light, if you choose night, play an interesting role in the picture before hitting export. We might want to save the location in case we want to make additional renderings from this perspective in the future. Click the View Management button and select Create View at the bottom. This will create a 3D view in Archicad from the current perspective. Saving the time of day as well. While we're at it, let's return to our visual settings one more time. Maybe you want to edit some of them and see what your image looks like in various conditions. Maybe change the cloud density, or add some outlines for an abstract look. Or go to the Sky tab to pick a more interesting horizon source. I like to add a little depth of field to the image. To do this, enable Depth of Field in the Main tab. Once it's enabled, you can disable autofocus to fine-tune the distance at which the image will be the sharpest. I feel like this gives the image the final touch. Okay, feeling good about your image? Then let's press the rendering button. Enscape will ask you where to save the image. Pick a location and you'll have the finished picture within just a few seconds. Want to share a 360-degree panorama with your audience instead? just use the button right next to it. Enscape will generate it from the position you are at. So maybe you want to move a little further towards the middle of the room for that. Once the panorama has been generated, you can find it in your Manage Uploads interface. It can be found right here back in the Archicad toolbar. While you can use this interface to save the panorama as a regular image file, it is much more convenient to share it using the Enscape cloud. Click this button to upload it. Once it's up there, click this button to open it in your browser. Or click the three dots for further options. Copy the direct link or copy a QR code that can be scanned with your mobile phone right away to review it. There is another tab in this Manage Uploads interface, which is referring to the web standalones you can generate from Enscape. To do that, just press the last of our three export buttons. The standalone will be uploaded automatically and can be accessed through that link. This ends our brief overview of Enscape for Mac. We hope you enjoy working with Enscape. If you run into issues, feel free to reach out to us using the feedback button or visit us in the forums at forum.enscape3d.com. Also, thank you for using Enscape.